it should start working from there. So I think we are now live. So apologies for the delay. Those of you on tenterhooks that have been waiting for us to start. Welcome to another of our weekly LinkedIn live sessions with an expert panel talking about all matters to do with safety and risk. I'm Christian Harris, if you don't know me, founder of Slip Safety Services, host of the Safety and Risk Success podcast, and I'm joined today by Jonathan and Colin, who will introduce themselves in a minute, and we're hoping that Dan Looney will be joining us shortly too. The topic today is going to be all around communication, so the importance of communication when it comes to safety and risk. How do we do it? When do we need to do it? And so on and so forth. I'm going to hand over to Jonathan to kind of facilitate that discussion. We'd love for you to join in with likes, comments, questions. If anybody watched last week, we haven't opened up the stream to everybody because we had a few gate crashes causing nuisance. But we very much welcome interaction on the stream. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Jonathan. Give us a quick intro, and then we can get into it, and Colin can introduce himself shortly.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jonathan Dempsey, founder and director at Red Laces, management consultancy that helps businesses with risk, safety and compliance at redlaces.co.uk. We also help with mentoring services, media and marketing. We're actually streaming live at the moment on Clubhouse as well. So if you are on Clubhouse in the Let's Talk Risk and Safety Club, you can actually listen to this audio only. I'll hand over to Colin.
Good morning, guys, and good morning, people that are joining us today. Thank you ever so much for taking some time and coming to listen. Yeah, my name is Colin Nottage. I run a mainly health and safety consultancy. We're doing a lot of environmental and quality work called Influential Management Group, IMG. And I also am the host of the Interesting Health and Safety podcast. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. So today we're talking about communication, and really this is I guess one of our early LinkedIn lives. We've done this a few times on Clubhouse, and one of the reasons I guess we're looking at communication is because it's something that actually affects all of us. We all have a role to play, and it cuts away the jargon. So straight away, this isn't a heavy technical session. It's something we'd really like you to all get involved in and share your experiences, maybe ask you some of your questions. Christian and Colin are both podcasters as well. So in terms of communication, wherever you are, these guys can be in your eardrops wherever you are all the time. So maybe we'll start with a more... Maybe we'll start with a general question of what does communication mean to you, Christian? When you hear the word communication, what does it mean to you?
I think for me, communication is all about influencing people, I suppose, is how I would put it. So that's probably why Colin's named his company using that word or a variant of that word. So, good communication is all about getting people to understand what you want of them, expect of them, would like them to do, and delivering that in a concise way that they understand and therefore they can act upon. I think that's how I would sum it up.
Sure. So then, Colin, on the other side of that, to some extent, what do you hear of when you hear the term risk or safety?
Right. I mean, risk and safety in respect of communication. Obviously, I mean, it's about. Sorry. Do you want to give us a better question, Jonathan? We're talking about communication. Let's have a slightly better question.
Well, the point I'm trying to get to is kind of because there's a perception, isn't there? A lot of the work that we do within the world of risk and safety and compliance is around changing perception, trying to influence. So the starting point is that everybody's got a view when they hear about communication, what it means to them. And then also when people hear the word or the term risk or safety, there's also some thoughts that come into the head. Mm-hmm. And actually then is there a two things we're trying to do then? Because if somebody automatically thinks of communication, it's something I want to get involved in. If somebody thinks risk and safety, that's something I don't want to get involved in, almost there's the motivation or our purpose for communicating.
Okay, I get what you're saying now. Then I mean, yeah. So so risk and safety have got in some people's eyes have got a bad a bad press, I suppose, is what we're trying to say here. And I think for me, what communication is really about is it's about a cross flow of information. It's about giving and receiving, and probably it's more about receiving than giving. We should spend more time actually listening to people than necessarily talking to people. And so from a risk perspective, perspective, if we, and from a safety perspective, if people are spending more time going out and listening to how people work, how people do their jobs, how people are being affected by the environments that businesses are asking people to go and work in, then that's got to be a good thing, and the more time you can spend finding that out by communicating is, and to be fair, going out is only one way. I'm sure there'll be a few things that we speak about as we go through today, but that's just one way that we communicate, is spend time in the field.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about today's communication, actually the ways that we communicate, the mechanism that we use to communicate. One of the things that probably to start off with is how we can actually communicate almost without saying anything, but actually by being present. So picking up on your point, Colin, and something that we referred to in last week's live session, was leaders getting out of the boardroom and actually getting onto site or getting onto the front line. And actually just by being present and observing and actually seeing what goes on, seeing the work that's being done and what some of the challenges are, and experience some of that. Would you say, Christian, that in itself is a form of communication, actually just by being present?
I'm sure it is, and I'm failing to do that because I'm monitoring the chat and doing all sorts of other things. But no, you're right, it is. I think, particularly if you're in a leadership role, you've got to be seen and heard, so people know that you're involved and actively taking an interest in what they're doing. Otherwise, they're not going to be inspired and kind of listen to what you want them to do.
And I think, sorry, John. I mean, one thing I'd like to say there, I think there's being seen is part of it. Okay, if you take health and safety, everybody wears eye-vis clothing. Even when they don't need to. So being seen is is easy, but it's how you interact. And it's how you're felt. I mean, there is a term, visible felt leadership, and whether you like that or not, it's something that's out there. And I think, if it's the feeling bit is the important bit. Yeah, you can be visible, you can be seen, but if people don't actually feel what it is that you're trying to bring to the table, or if you don't feel what they're trying to bring to the table, then you're missing out.
That harkens back a little bit to something we spoke a bit about last week around, I think it was last week anyway on here, around, safety's our number one priority is said, but if it isn't felt by everybody in the organisation, then it won't be delivered.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually something in here of communication about what isn't said. So the hidden meaning or what comes along. So something about being authentic, that authenticity, the motivation behind a message, and people actually taking that. So reading between the lines was the phrase that would have been said in the past, isn't it? Particularly if you go back to thinking of print media, because a lot of media now is very different, but reading between the lines. So we need our business leaders, and I guess to help business leaders then to feel comfortable, to feel that they can be vulnerable, to ask a question and to understand and take that time to be curious, as opposed to trying to push a message out there.
Yeah, we've had a good comment from Paul Daly saying the effectiveness of our communication should be judged on the response it gets. Turn the light back on ourselves. Too often we as an industry probably complain that people aren't listening to safe systems of work, procedure, or whatever it might be, without fully analysing, is our communication actually clear?
Love that. I love that comment, and I think it's we do spend too much time pushing stuff one way, and we've got to open ourselves up. There's no way that the documentation or the safe systems of work or the procedures or whatever it is that have been produced are actually going to be suitable for every job on every day at every time. And it's about listening to the people and finding out well, what are the issues, what are the problems, what are the barriers that they're coming up against, and how are they dealing with them? Because ultimately, and rather than writing it down, which is everyone is just being really comfortable that in actual fact the way that they say that they're going to deal with it, we're really comfortable with. And I think that's the bit for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going through a bit of a journey with as you guys know, with my business and working with some insurance companies on a sort of training platform, for want of a better term, to use a very basic explanation, and we're looking at that being a sort of international thing. So this is a topic actually I've been thinking a lot about in that context of, how do I ensure that the message I'm putting across, albeit it's English speaking countries, is going to be fully understood, because, the way that we explain something in UK English might be different to the way the same thing is explained in American English, for example. So that's an interesting quandary to have.
And what is your answer? What is your answer to that? I mean, I've got an idea, Christian, but what's your answer to that?
Well, what we're trying to do is enable some feedback. So basically, we're setting up kind of these training modules, but then we're going to have a regular sort of webinar and opportunities for feedback and clarifications and things like that. So trying to set up a bit of a feedback loop. So we'll do our best to communicate as clearly as we can. But if we find that it isn't landing for whatever reason, then we'll obviously be able to get that feedback quickly and improve. That's the idea anyway.
Yeah, and I think, for me is, one of the things is find somebody who's got a similar outlook to you in that country to actually deliver the message, rather than it being, necessarily yours. We, as you know, we've got an online sort of health and safety tool that's got lots of questions in there, and it's like, and we're working with the business and actually saying, right, well, let's, in the different countries, let's get people from those countries to write the questions rather than they being written in English, because people do look at different terms, they look at different words, and they have different meanings. And so it's getting that understanding. And to be totally honest with you, the same happens in the UK, doesn't it? How somebody says something in the southwest is completely different to how somebody says something in Newcastle. And so when you're in a business and when you're in an organization that has got a national reach or a global reach, then why would you want one size fits all with your communication style? I think the thing is consistency of message. Okay, and the intensity needs to be the same, but you can definitely work around it.
Yeah, I did languages for at school, and for my degree was in French. So that's always an interesting thing around translation. I know that's another level, but how do you say something in French or translate something from French to English to get the same resonance and the cultural impact and all that stuff? And it's not always possible to do it exactly. You have to just kind of do the best thing you can. But yeah, it helps to have that context.
I saw a great post on LinkedIn the other day about people that were trying to speak. Was it easier to learn Spanish or English? And there was like different words, different ways that words were being used, and basically, our languages are quite complex, aren't they? And there's so many different ways to pronounce a word to have a different meaning, even with the same spelling, So it's it's very it's complicated. If it was easy, we wouldn't be here talking about it, would we? So
that's very true. Yeah, that's very true. Very true.
How have you seen, Colin, communication around risk and safety, let's say, evolve over the last 10 years? Have you, and obviously social media has become a bigger tool now, so there's almost a democracy of communication. Well, you can tell me, but more people can more readily start a podcast now or a YouTube channel or get content out there, whereas 20 years ago, essentially, we were all consumers of information. How have you seen that change in the safety world, risk world?
So I think the way that people consume information has changed just in society, not just within health and safety. And I think, people don't want long form as much as they used to. I think people are looking for just short, sharp snippets, just very, very bite-sized bits of information that they can consume and digest almost immediately, and either take something out of it or chuck it away. And you just look at, all the time, when people are using social media, and there's always a bit of a quandary. I feel that, we've got a fantastic device that pretty much every person in the UK and many people around the world own a phone. Okay, and you've got access to a phone. There's a lot of businesses that actually ban the use because there's a concern about, say, using a phone when you're operating a piece of machinery, and I get that. But it's also an absolutely fantastic way of getting messages to people. And I was chatting to a guy up in Hull the other day who's and he's done something really, really simple. He's just set up a WhatsApp group for his site, just for the people on the site to either give him issues that he needs to address, or the site, or good stuff that they see, and it just becomes something that just snowballs, and they can, it just becomes such an easy format to just take a photo, send a comment, whatever it may be, and it moves away from having to go and fill out this near miss reporting procedure, or this best practice procedure, or whatever it may be. Just utilize something that's there, but obviously do it in a way that's not going to put yourself or your colleagues at risk if you're operating a bit of kit.
I was chatting the other day to a guy who's called Guy, funnily enough, who works in the leisure industry, talking about kind of communication to members around, gyms are reopening. This is what we're going to do with your direct debit and all that sort of stuff. And he was telling me that he is a big supporter of using text messaging, because apparently, while the open rate for an email, for example, is maybe 20% or 30% or whatever, but the open rate for a text message is like 97%, and actually the responsive action percentage to a text is massively high as well. So it's a good way of thinking about, as you say, we've got this amazing device in our hands. Let's think about different ways of using it. So it's not just what we're saying, but how we're saying it as well.
And I think when you look at how, especially the younger generation that are coming through, and I'm not being ageist or ageist at all here, but just things like Twitter, and just things like some of the dating apps that they use, where it is literally look and swipe, look and swipe, look and swipe, and and that's that is how people are people are communicating and listening. Sorry, that's me making a noise there on my phone. It's this. Let's do the same when we're getting a message out there. Let's just have a 2 or 3 words. Let's just have do you remember many years ago there was Hill Street Blues was a cop show, wasn't it? And at the very end, the guy said at the end of the thing, be safe out there, or be careful out there, or something like that. Or just little messages like that you could just put out to your workers, especially if they've got a particular job coming up. Hey, look, we're working at height today. Let's just really think about working at height. Don't need to say any more than that. And just keep it short, sharp, to the point. Bang.
Yeah, certainly, if we come back to our earlier point about being authentic, I think because if it's genuine and people know that you genuinely mean it, then absolutely that could be really powerful, because it's not just saying be safe. It's look, you have my support. We're behind you all the way. We're going to help you do the right thing. It's absolutely. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's that two leaders could say the same thing, but the feeling or the meaning behind that, the way it's taken about, could mean a very different thing.
We're getting some banter from James McPherson in the audience here, saying 3 old men talking about the younger generation.
Yeah, I know. We can learn, though, James. It's all about learning, mate. You know what I mean? And we can definitely learn from the from the whippersnappers like you.
I just look old. I'm not actually that old. I just look old.
Here's back last year, the IRSM, the International Institute of Risk Safety Management, asked me to put together top 5 tips on communication. And there's always a million things that you could suggest, but I've got the 5 that I went with. I'd be interested in your thoughts of whether you think one or more is different, better, or you'd put one. The first one was ask more open questions. For me, that was the number one to start with. Ask more open questions. So not are we legal, are we safe, are we compliant, but an open question that invites some content. Number 2 was collaborate proactively. Number 3 was social listening. So an individual level, that active listening, but in an organization, what's going on, really taking that the time. Number 4 was be creative and be curious. And number 5 was be accessible, trying to give information to people that's personal. It's when they need it and it's where they need it, which kind of then plays into that social media being available on different platforms. So of those 5, are there any that you would pick out, Colin, as being one that resonates more strongly, or would you have a different number one that you go in with as a top tip around communication?
Okay, I mean, I think I think the 5, just from what you've said there, obviously just listening to them for the very, very first time that you said it, taking it in. There was some really valid stuff that you had there. Okay. I think what is going to be more important or less important is going to depend on the situation and the state of the organization at that particular point in time. Being creative, I think I love that idea. I worked a couple of years ago with a company where we did what was called some social graffiti. which is about writing messages on the floors of where people are walking, and rather than having it up on a notice board, putting it in a completely different location. And and it was just really, really impactful for a short amount of time. And this is the thing, whatever you do is, you have to keep on mixing it up. You have to keep on changing it. With respect to text messaging, I really get what you're talking about there, Christian. But you've also got to be careful with it. I've lost a lot of weight in the last 6 months. Okay, and I've been on a program with some guys who have been really, really effective at motivating me and getting me challenged on what I need to do. And when I first started on the program, I can remember getting on a Wednesday morning, I got a personal message from the leader of the organization saying, "Hey, Colin, great big day today. Do this, do that." And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is fantastic. In week 2 on that Wednesday morning, I got the same message. In week 3, I got the same message. In week 4, I got the same message. That message, to be totally honest with you, I was a little bit peed off at the end, and I thought that wasn't actually meant for me. That was a bot that's produced that. And so that comes back to this authenticity, Jonathan, that you're talking about there. And it's so much more important to be authentic than it is to be perfect. And it's, and that for me is about getting, whatever it is that you're going to put out, whatever message you're going to be putting out, believe in it. And if it's not quite the right message, it matters less than getting the absolute right message, but delivering it in an inauthentic way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's something, with any sort of marketing as well. There's this big thing about personalization and stuff like that, isn't there, with marketing, which is obviously a form of communication. And if you get it wrong, then it can go very wrong, because it's kind of clear. How many times have you had a LinkedIn message with like "hi" first name, or an email with "hi" first name, or something like that, and it just puts you off totally, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
I think the thing for me around what I would say around, I thought the 5 points were excellent as well. The biggest thing for me, I think I said this at the start, is clarity as well, because I think if you're not clear as to what you're trying to say and what outcome you want to inspire from that communication, then you're never going to achieve what you want. So I fully agree, by the way, that it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think you've got to think pretty carefully about what outcome you're looking to get, and then what's the best way, the best way for now, at least, that I can get that message across in the right way and in the right form.
Well, absolutely. In terms of effectiveness, or in terms of, it's always difficult when you label somebody, and binary, yes or no, good or bad. So not something I would normally go for, but can we be a good communicator or a bad communicator, or is everybody somewhere on that continuum? And the thing that's going to really decide that is their curiosity and wanting to be better. So from my view, I could be better, and I can strive to be better, and I strive to be more effective as a communicator, and I care. So I just keep trying new things and getting feedback and keep trying. So wherever I am on that continuum, I don't think I'm good or bad, but I think I'm getting better. Where do you see that, Christian? Do you think of people who they're bad communicators, or think of people who are good communicators, or do you see people that are on on that continuum?
Well, I think generally in life, not just talking about communication, anybody that thinks they're good or at something or bad at something is making a mistake. I think we're always on a journey of learning and improving, or certainly that's what I believe. Colin and James, who's in the chat, and I had a good chat about personal development the other day for a podcast interview I was doing with the guys. And to me, it's all about striving to be better, incremental gains. I think I could point to people that are better communicators than others, but I do think everybody is on that journey, as they are with all things in life. That would be my view.
I think my opinion of how good a communicator I am is pretty irrelevant. The person who it's important is the person that they're communicating with, and how do they feel. And there could be days when I'm a really great listener, and I really take something on board that somebody said to me. I think the point that you made at the beginning about asking open questions. I think it's I think what's more important is listening to the open answers that come from those open questions. And so it was nice to hear that you talked about active listening later on, because you can ask all the questions in the world, but if you don't listen to any of the answers, then you've totally wasted your time. So it's really important to me though that I could have great days and I can have bad days. I can have different pressures on. The people that I'm chatting with, the people that I'm communicating with can have great days and bad days. And so you what you can't do is you mustn't judge. You mustn't judge it at that particular point in time. You've just got to look at look at the bigger picture and ultimately are you really understanding what's happening, and other people in the business really understanding what's happening. And if you've got that, then you're in a great place. And if you haven't got that, then somewhere somebody's not listening. It's not working, is it? So,
and it comes back to that being authentic as well, because the asking the open questions actually was the flip of the first podcast I did was largely with James, and we looked at compliance. Does compliance stop the conversation? And the context around it was, many leaders will say, are we legal? Are we compliant? Are we safe? Because it's actually a leading question. They actually don't want the answer. They actually want you to say, as the fire safety director or as the safety director, they want you to say, yes, we're okay. So actually we can now crack on with the rest of the business. And that's kind of where it came from. So whilst obviously businesses need to meet their obligations, and compliance is an element of that, there's we did see, and we spent an hour talking about the fact that actually it's, again, that motivation. As a leader, I want to be able to crack on, and you tell me I'm okay. You tell me I'm going to stay out of jail. Of course, that creates a culture, and we've seen that with some headline news. There's certain cases where fire safety directors and others have actually felt compelled to give an answer they weren't comfortable with, because it created that fear culture. So how do you, there will be times when you need a yes or no, but generally, would you say it's dangerous to only focus on closed questions, Colin?
Well, I think if you ask a closed question, then you're gonna get a closed answer. And if that's what you're looking for, then ask that. But you don't. I would say don't ask closed questions. Ask questions that are giving the people the opportunity to tell a story. And if somebody can tell a story, then what they're going to do is they're going to tell it so much better. There's going to be so much more information there, and it starts to put, you mentioned earlier about context. The context is really important. So when you're looking at after an event, when something's gone wrong, if you're going down the route of just pointing a finger and blaming and wanting a yes or no answer, then you're not going to learn anything. You're going to learn absolutely nothing. And but whereas if you can step into the shoes of the person, and try and find out and understand, what it was, the part of the journey that they were on before that event happened, you're going to learn so much more from it. And that's only going to come about by being more open with the questions that you ask.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? You can see if you're leading a big company, you kind of need to have you need to sort of have a red or a green in many cases. But then it's about framing that question properly, because the question isn't, are we safe or not? The question should be, are we meeting on balance the agreed objectives and outcomes and stuff, about all the things we've discussed in an open and collaborative way beforehand, so that actually we're understanding, we've got clarity about what we're both talking about, and then that should avoid those difficult conversations or difficult moments where the last thing you want is to put people under pressure to be giving you an answer that they don't want to give because they don't feel confident in it. That's horrendous. Definitely wouldn't want to be in that position myself, that's for sure.
From your webinars, we've all done webinars, conferences and that kind of thing. Obviously that's in the past year they've all gone virtual. How have you found, because all of us like being with people and sharing messages and hearing from and meeting other people. Of course, a lot of our webinars have had to almost be on Zoom or the equivalent, so it's been harder to get that interaction. How have you, Christian first, then Colin, how have you found that takeaway how you like to express that communication. The fact that you can't be in a room of people, you're having to go through a screen and rely on a chat function. That's, Christian is literally now relying on a message coming through a chat. How do you find that personally has impacted on you? And are you looking forward to getting back out on a stage or back in front of a room of people?
I think that there's obviously pros and cons. Like I've often spoken with people during this last year and said, thank goodness that this happened now when we've got this kind of technology, because had it happened, I don't know about 5 years ago, but 10, 15 years ago, it would have been much, much more difficult to be achieving anything, wouldn't it, in terms of work, but also things like this of getting messages out there and events and stuff. I'm a big fan of technology because I think you can leverage your messages in communication. So for me, I'd much rather do an IOSH meeting on Zoom or in person and have 100 people listening than I would do 100 individual meetings in that context, because actually it's about communicating a message out and getting limited feedback. Obviously, if it's different if you're working with somebody on a project or whatever, that's a different thing. And actually, I think in that case, the face-to-face is really much better way of doing it. But overall, for me, it's been a benefit having this technology available. I think it will improve the way that lots of things are done, and the environmental impact, the time, the cost, the efficiencies, and things like that.
And that, I mean, I agree with what you said there, Christian. I think, from my perspective, I think one of the things that this has done is definitely has given me the opportunity to talk to so many more people. So I can talk to somebody in Australia or America or wherever around the world easily. It's just a case of just getting a time when we can get together and off we go. And so that's really great. I think the downside is I like to express myself a bit more when I'm talking, and obviously you if I started moving and walking around in this room, it wouldn't be very effective. And also I think there's quite a lot of times on Zoom where you don't know when to butt in and say something, and you wouldn't have that in a room when there was people. There's almost like a much more natural flow to conversations when you're in a room, when you're talking to people. And so again, one of the things that you've done well today, Jonathan, is you've actually said, here's a question, right, you go first, Christian, and then Colin, you go next. And that's great. That puts a little bit of order to it. We know where we are. It gives us a chance to gather our thoughts and off we go. There's times when that doesn't happen and the question goes out there, and then people don't know when to come in, when to say something. Clubhouse is terrible for it.
Yeah, that's one of the I was about to say that's one of the difficulties of the Clubhouse, isn't it? That you're sort of you at least here there's the visual clues of like I'm opening my mouth or I'm sitting up and you can see somebody wants to talk. So I do think Zoom is it's a bit like video is the sort of alpha of marketing, isn't it? Because actually you get to see people and you hear them as well, and you get a bit more context. And I think so Zoom is for me better than Clubhouse from that perspective of an in-depth discussion. Of course, there's the benefit of Clubhouse is the democratization, the fact that anybody can come up and speak, and obviously that is better than a telephone. We've had Andy Hawkes, who you guys might know. He's involved in the IIRSM. He was the president, I think, until last year. He's asked a couple of questions which I think are good ones, worthy of debate. So he said, in a compliance-led or litigious environment, how does the open question debate we just had square up? So when you're in court, the barrister will want to know the yes, no, and the evidence. What are people's thoughts? What's your view on that, Jonathan? Because you've been a regulator, so you've sat on the barrister side and the defendant side of that.
Yeah, I had as a rookie environmental health officer, I was actually cross-examined by a barrister for 3.5 hours in a prosecution of a national retailer, which was successful in actually a 3-day trial. And the barristers have there's an art to how they talk. They tie you up in words. There's nothing like it. everything said earlier on about those top 5 tips, I would wholeheartedly, as a regulator, former regulator, go along with that as well. In my experience as being a regulator, a leader across lots of different industries, and now as a consultant, the biggest barrier or the biggest risk of becoming, say, prosecuted or sued is by sticking to the closed questions. If you ask the open questions, you're showing a willingness to learn more, what needs to be done and what support your teams need. You want to know more about what the requirements are. Actually saying no. So are we legal? Are we safe? You're on a slippery slope, because you're relying on the competence of your teams to have all the answers and to be able to give you an answer, and they might not know. And I would suggest, and certainly from experiences I've had, is that organisations where the leadership are asking, are we legal, are we compliant, are we safe, their health and safety teams are perhaps less well resourced, less well supported to be able to have the answers. I'll give an example. In logistics, if you imagine a health and safety team have carried out the risk assessments and they're looking at activities within the yard around people and vehicles and that kind of thing, the likelihood that they know of incidents where people are jumping up and down, jumping out of cabs, jumping up off the docking areas and whatever at 2 o'clock in the morning, the likelihood that they're aware of that is remote until there's an incident. And on investigation, when the CCTV is looked at for the previous 2 or 3 days, and we find out actually this is just common, this is behaviour, this is what happens, there's a culture of that, the likelihood that the team know is remote. So the board aren't going to know. Whereas actually, if we say we've got a risk assessment, it's not a document. It's helping us to understand what the issues are. Where might that not be working? What time of day? Which sites may that not be quite as effective as we want to be? Let's go and have a look. That's where you're going to find your support. So absolutely, closed questions are the problem, not the open questions when it comes to.
I mean, I'm obviously much more niche than the two of you. So, my deep knowledge is in my particular area around slips and falls and stuff. But I mean, are there areas where of other aspects of safety and risk where it would come down to a single, or it could come down to a single yes or no? Are you compliant or not? And that could define the outcome of a court case, or do we think it's a bit more nuanced than that?
I think it definitely could. I mean, if the question is asked is, was the lifting equipment in date? It's going to be a very, very simple, straightforward yes or no answer. But and I think the thing is if you're having to go to court, it's something that I've been involved with in the past. It's it can be a very, very difficult environment for people to go into. It's an unusual environment. It's not one that people are used to going into. I think the thing is you need to have a bit of awareness, maybe a bit of coaching before you go in there. I think the important thing is not to lie. Just go in and tell it as it is. Tell things as truthfully as you possibly can, but don't necessarily offer information. Just answer the questions that are posed to you. And the minute you start to trial and fatten out an answer, then that is when you can then start to get tripped up. And so I think the point I suppose really that we're making here is that there's different ways, and there's different ways of communicating in different contexts, in different environments. And there's certain environments where all you want to do pre-incident almost is lots and lots of open stuff within your own business. I think the more open you can be, the better. But once you start to move into environments where things are a little bit more litigious, then maybe you have to be a little bit more guarded. But again, it's you still just want to be honest. You've got to be honest.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Thinking about slips and trips, my experience is that if there's a slip test evidence and it doesn't meet the HSE benchmark, then it's quite difficult to defend that claim. But it's not. I wouldn't say it's impossible, because you can layer on other things around the control measures. It's not. But the example you gave though is much clearer. If you've got a piece of equipment and needs to be, in order to be deemed as safe by the HSE, it has to have been tested every 12 months or something, and you haven't done that, then of course that does become more black and white, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just a detail on there. It's worth checking what the legal obligation is. In the case that I was involved in, the barrister actually tried to persuade the court that the knife involved was actually safe to use. And as I pointed out to the barrister and to the court, the law didn't actually, the wording of the law wasn't that the knife was safe. The law was that the knife needed to be maintained in good and effective condition, or words to that effect. And I was able to demonstrate that it hadn't been maintained in good and effective condition. So again, this is where that binary, are we safe, are we not safe, it's closing down the learning and the understanding, as opposed to exploring what are our obligations, what would we need to do, not just to protect our teams and our business and our profitability, but actually what are our obligations. And the legislation will have different wording. It's not just are we safe, are we not safe. It's way more complex.
Cool.
Out of interest, how do you argue that a knife is safe to use?
I wouldn't necessarily argue.
Oh no, I'm just what was the argument that was made?
If
you can remember that far back.
I suggested that it wasn't safe to use as far as it hadn't been maintained in the condition it needed to be. Obviously, that wasn't the whole basis of the case. No. There was the lack of training and all the other investigations that went with it. So it would be very rare that there will be a whole prosecution based on one particular fact.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I was just being a bit facetious.
Sure. I'm conscious of time, and we could kind of talk today. Are there any other questions or comments coming in, Christian?
Not since Andy's last one, no. But if anyone's got any questions, then please do fire away. We'll start wrapping up in the next few minutes, but very happy to take any more questions. We've had a few general comments, enjoying and appreciating it, but I've managed to pick up the questions as they've come in so far.
I think my takeaway point from today in our conversation would be ask more open questions for everybody at every level of the organization, but particularly I think for business leaders is to be more curious, to work out not just what more we need to do to meet our obligations, but what more support do you need in your role? What is working well, what isn't working well, and to drive more collaboration across an organization as well, to create that environment where people can get an understanding of what more is going on. Because that can help profitability as well. If a health and safety team, rather than asking for support for an IT system, actually is collaborating with the IT department, they'll know that the IT department have just got resource for a brand new system. If they know that the HR department are using, bringing in a new payroll system, there's got a risk module that they could get in there at the same time that's going to help. It's by collaborating, by asking more open questions. If everybody's being curious, then that's how we learn. And if there are problems, then we can pick them out and start to prioritize how we deal with them.
Mm-hmm. No, good point.
Yeah,
I think for me, I think if you feel that you're really good at communicating, okay, then just look in the mirror, or maybe go and have a chat to other people, and really find out from the person that you are, you're engaging with, and keep on practicing it. It's something that you just need to strive to get better and better and better at. And I think, one of the issues that businesses face is the better that they get at communicating, so the expectations of the people within the business rises. And so because of that, they have to get better and better and better. So just because you've moved things forward and you've got good, then you're going to have to get better and better and better. And and I think if you do that, and if you're continually striving. I was chatting to a guy yesterday, okay, and within their business, and I love this, they had a director of happiness. And I thought, what a lovely role. And that person, that person's role in that, they had lots of other things that they had to do in the business. They weren't just going around telling jokes, okay. But what they were doing is they were really looking at how effective was the culture in the business. Did people enjoy working there? And and that was part of their role. And I thought, what a beautiful business that is to work in. And it might think it's a little bit woohooey, but it's actually really, really valuable. And and just create that environment where people can be open, honest, and they trust people. And if you've got that, then your communication's working and your business is going to be successful.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think for me, one of the messages that we need to communicate or help people to communicate is that safety isn't just safety and risk management isn't just risk management. It's actually all about that. It's about producing that feeling of protection and feeling of safety and feeling of comfort, because that's when people will do their best work. And then, as a business, safety then isn't a cost, it's an enabler for high performance and all the benefits that brings with it. So yeah, I think the more people that have directors of happiness, the better.
Brilliant.
That's a great note to finish on, I think. Hard to beat that one.
Definitely. Well, thanks, Jonathan and Colin, and thanks to everybody that's joined in the discussion. We'll be back here next week. We haven't agreed a topic for next week, but we'll let you know. But it'd be great to see some more of you back here again. If you're interested and you want to maybe join us on the Zoom, so we record this on Zoom and we stream it out, and join in the panel, then that would be great. So James, I'm sure one day we can get you up, and Andy, if you're still watching, it'd be great to get you up as well, and give us some of your perspectives. And as we said last week, we'd love to get some non-males up on with us as well, and try and diversify out a bit as well. So thanks very much for joining in. Thanks very much for watching and your questions, and we enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.